Story 1. The possibilities. I could have done better at making the most of them. Story 2. I am really happy not to be a teenager anymore. That sucked. Story 3. I miss the teenage version of myself who thought staying up until 3 in the morning doing nothing was peak productivity. Now staying up past 11 in the evening feels like a criminal offense against my own body. Story 4. My body is not hurting. Endless potential. The list goes on. That said, being a teenager is really hard. Story 5. I have many dreams and ambitions about the future. Today, I seem to have only a small path to follow. Story 6. Personally, friendships were pure and life did not feel as serious. Story 7. Seeing my friends and family every day, having far fewer responsibilities, and being in better shape. Laughing out loud. Story 8. Feelings. When that song came on the radio, I felt like bursting. Driving at sunset, listening to my favorite mixtape, I wanted to keep driving into the fading light. So much energy and angst welled up inside me. I have settled down and I love the calm, but I would really like to feel that passion and energy again. Story 9. I used to have hair and skin that thrived on water and neglect. Now my bathroom looks like a pharmacy, and I still wake up looking like a potato. Story 10. Having a lot of freedom but very little responsibility. Story 11. I was skinny and had low cholesterol without giving any thought to how I ate. Story 12. The spontaneity of being a teenager was unmatched. We had no plans and just went wherever the day took us. I wish I could relive those moments. Story 13. Being more naive and having more time to live. Story 14. I miss being spoiled and the freedom. Even though I had a job and attended school, my laundry was done for me and dinner was served at 5:30. I had so many dreams and possibilities and so much time. Story 15. Being able to meet without planning as if it were an Apollo moon mission. Hey, do you want to come over? Versus, are you available that day? What about another day? Maybe late morning. I am not available after 1 o'clock. Are we bringing food? What should we bring? I say this as an introvert who declined many social invitations as a teenager. I may not have wanted to hang out frequently or with certain people, but I do miss having the option to do so. I also do not want to feel like I am living in an empire in terminal decline. Story 16. I had lots of free time and the energy to pull all-nighters. I spent late nights gaming and procrastinating on schoolwork until the last minute. It felt like living the dream, but now I need several days to recover after staying up past midnight. I still would not go back to that time. Living with helicopter parents and having no autonomy was a nightmare. Story 17. Aches and pains. Unable to do everything I wanted physically. Story 18. Before the internet, people were nicer and calmer. You did not have to remember hundreds of passwords or keep your phone and email handy to sign into things. You watched the news at 6 or 10 in the evening and that was it. There was not the constant round-the-clock stream of bad news like there is today. The pace of life felt slower, and you did not feel constantly harried. The internet is the Pandora's box of our times. Story 19. To live for the hope of it all, cancel plans just in case you would call. Story 20. Having time to relax at a friend's place and do nothing special. Story 21. This may sound like a strange answer, but my first job mattered more than the money. My family forbade me from keeping my paycheck most weeks. My paycheck was deposited into a savings account for when I went to college. I was allowed some spending money but very limited. As I said, the job was not about the money. My home life was difficult and I won't go into why. The job was a safe haven away from my family. My best friend worked there, and I developed strong friendships with my coworkers. I worked in the bakery of a supermarket. We were right next to the produce section, and I became close with one of the produce workers. The job was essentially my entire social life. When I walked home from school, I often stopped by because they had free coffee, and I would chat with coworkers. Story 22. Growing up, my parents took responsibility for solving my problems and meeting my needs. For example, if I wanted pizza, they would order and buy it. If I forgot my materials at home, they would bring them to class. If I had a project, they would help me complete it. In college, I wanted to be independent, and it was difficult to buy things with my own money, manage my budget, and solve problems on my own because there was no one else to turn to. Story 23. Sometimes I miss talking with my old friends from those days. I also miss being able to sleep in, which I lost once I became an adult. I don't know why, but I always seem to get too little sleep. Story 24. I do not know. I am a 31-year-old teenager when I am not at work. I have to be professional at work. Story 25. When I was a teenager, we all assumed there would be a nuclear war and that the dead would be the lucky ones. I missed the sense of security I lost. I had hoped my children would not have to face a climate holocaust because I did not have that security when I was young. Story 26. People reacted positively when you showed interest in new skills. It was not embarrassing to admit you did not know something. You could ask and people would be kind and explain. Somewhere in my 20s it got strange. We went from, "Come here, kid, this is how things work," to, "Why does this random woman talk to me instead of minding her own business?" When you are a teenager, strangers believe in you. As an adult, that is rarer. You have to seek it out and fight for it, and most importantly, learn to foster that belief within yourself. That is rewarding, but I still miss that attitude from others. Story 27. It kind of terrifies me that I am not a teenager anymore. Well, I guess I do not have to worry about the future. What am I going to do? The cheapest house or condominium where I live is $20,000. And it is in the middle of nowhere. The nearest one in a town costs as little as $50,000. How am I going to get that kind of money? Story 28. No worries about bills, children, or the future. Just sit with friends, talk, play, sleep, and repeat. Mostly, it feels like no one depends on me for anything. Story 29. I waste money on stupid things without a care. Okay, I still do this. Never mind. Story 30. Sorry for the spelling. No worries or stress about jobs. I remember having no worries except for school and later university, which were the best years of my life with new friendships, going out, and gaming with friends. Now those things are rare because I still do not have a full, stable job, and it is not easy anymore to find one in my field or any field that will offer stability. This is my biggest worry now, and the stress is huge, which was not the case back then since my only obligation was school and university. I am so lucky that I had that experience, and I miss those days. I still go out, play games, and hang out with my friends, but it is very limited because there are many other important responsibilities on both sides, and sometimes it is hard to combine everything. I know many say they will keep hanging out the same, but it is just not possible. I am still in contact with many people and we do meet, but it is not every day like before. It just flew so fast, but that is life. We will always have groups of friends, and this is something to cherish as much as we can. I sometimes miss those days when everything was easy and there were no worries about money or anything like that. Yes, I did not have my own money, but I had all that free time. Story 31. In hindsight, it was the worry-free life. No financial obligations, no career stress, no marital challenges to work through. I just did not appreciate it at the time because those problems felt so abstract to a teenage mind. Instead, peer pressure to fit in felt like the most important thing in the world. I wish someone had smacked that out of me. Story 32. I could get by on 2 to 3 hours of sleep with no problem. Now I need a solid 8 hours of sleep, or I mess up everything that day. Story 33. I guess I'm lucky not to long for any part of those years. Story 34. I used to be a bit stronger because I was heavier. I remember one time someone accidentally ran into me. They were knocked to the floor and I did not feel it. Other than that, I do not miss anything about being a child. I have more control over everything as an adult. Story 35. The internet back then was a fun escape, a pocket away from reality you could drop in and out of. No matter who or where you were, you could go to a collective space filled with primitive memes and Flash animation. Now Flash is dead. Memes require knowledge of earlier memes to be understood, and the internet has become a second layer of reality that we are forced to interact with. Story 36. It's not that I have no expectations per se, but when you face looming obligations, hard times, or feel overwhelmed, you should be able to cry and have people comfort you. There is much more sympathy for teenagers when the going gets tough. They are still kids. Some things do not get easier with age. Yet somehow the expectation that you will handle everything on your own becomes greater once you turn 18. Story 37. I have my hair, both knees work correctly, and I have the ability to achieve and sustain an erection. Story 38. I was able to get away with the shit I did. On second thought, I don't miss it because I was a fucking horrible, precocious, entitled pervert and petty criminal. I was a cunt. Story 39. A carefree mentality, a promising future, and a feeling of invincibility. Story 40. The dedication to play Roller Coaster Tycoon for hours on end and to create the best theme park with great rides. Story 41. I enjoy studying and learning. I miss some of my teachers and librarians, but not the school as an institution or the students. Being a child or teenager was a horrible experience, and I am so glad to be an adult. Story 42. Last year of being a teenager, but I have messed it up since the outbreak of coronavirus disease 2019. I regret not studying properly, not taking care of my health, weight, or height, not enjoying life, and being under a lot of stress that is ruining me. Story 43. I miss how simple everything felt. No bills, no 9-to-5 job, no pressure to have life all figured out. Just wake up, go to school, hang out with friends, maybe stress over a math test, and that is it. Story 44. I came home from school to find my mom waiting for me. We sat on the balcony, ate ice cream, chatted, and sometimes fell asleep in the sun. I know I will never feel so carefree and safe again. Story 45. Having the energy and desire to be passionate about hobbies, relationships, music, education, and life in general. Story 46. I miss the intensity of emotional experience and the way writing felt back then. I used to love writing and wish I could get that back. Burnout has taken a toll on me. Story 47. Have someone else pay all the bills. Have 2 of every joint. Eat whatever I want. Story 48. Having younger, healthier parents. Nothing else. Story 49. My body keeps working despite my not taking good care of it. People also do not expect me to act like an adult. Story 50. As a teenager, you never have enough money. Even as an adult, it still never seems to be enough. Story 51. Eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and having no obligations. Story 52. Being able to play video games and smoke weed all day, laughing out loud. Story 53. The then beautiful and civilized city in which I lived, Santa Barbara, California. Story 54. Recovery periods after drinking or smoking make me feel old. I do not want the angst, pent-up energy, social pressures, and drama. No, thank you. Never again. Story 55. The confidence to do anything before thinking about the consequences. Story 56. I cannot lie. In secondary school, I had awesome friends. Now everyone is just weird. Laughing out loud. Story 57. Knowing how much was ahead of me, I became very good-looking. That's over now. Story 58. Being wild and having time to study without worrying about money. Story 59. Why are these answers not convincing? Obviously, your health deteriorates as you grow older. Can anyone give an answer that will help me appreciate my teenage years more? They're ending, and I have hated most of them. I'm trying to find the good in this time. Story 60. Not having to worry about the future or about your parents aging. Story 61. We have huge bills. We work to live, and that simply does not seem right. I do not understand how single people are making it right now. A one-bedroom apartment with nothing included is from $1,300 to $2,000 a month around here. That is more than the mortgage on our 3-bedroom house that we built. Nothing adds up anymore, and I feel awful for people. Story 62. Being able to see. I have a degenerative eye disease and became blind a few years ago. I am 44 now. From ages 13 through 18, I had almost no vision loss. Being able to see is as important as being able to drive a car and having a sense of independence. Story 63. The things you thought were worries turned out to be just spots and overplucked eyebrows. Story 64. Feel energetic without needing 3 cups of coffee first. Story 65. Swapping a memory card back and forth to compete offline with friends in Mario Kart Double Dash time trials. Story 66. I miss many things. I guess I'm horny this morning, so I'll say the effortless sexual moments and the time we had just lying together, exploring each other's bodies. Story 67. Nothing. I was extremely ill as a teenager, which meant I missed out on many things, and I do not want to experience that again. Story 68. I just miss that version of me. She was fun, spontaneous, creative. Now I am just anxious. Story 69. I remember being home alone at 18, the first time I tried weed. I got high just before taking a shower. When I stepped out, Alice Cooper's "I'm 18" came on. I had never heard it before. Listening to the lyrics, I thought I was old. Unbelievable. Story 70. I miss my good health and friends the most. Story 71. Nothing. I was very sleep deprived, did not eat enough, and was overly perfectionistic. I always wanted 100 at grades. Story 72. Being young means having more energy, dating girls, having fun, and not having to deal with adult responsibilities. Story 73. Sleep, energy, and to be honest, when it comes to romance, it's lonely here, man. I'm going to marry my paperwork at this point. Story 74. I thought everything would get better once I left my parents' house. Plot twist. My generation never left our parents' homes. Story 75. I did not have the greatest teen years, so there is not much I would change. I guess I would like to relive the launch of the Sega Dreamcast. That was cool. Story 76. I stayed awake all night on nervous energy. Story 77. Being able to play a PC game for 12 hours a day or more without a care in the world. I am now 40. I have played and finished one game in the past 12 months. I still cannot complain. I have a nice, fulfilling life, a great wife, a wonderful family, and the dream job I have wanted since I was 6. Story 78. I am full of dreams and thinking that I am going to be rich. Story 79. My tiny waist and round ass and how they fit into my size 3 jeans. Story 80. Eating large quantities of the worst foods for you without gaining a single pound. Story 81. How much freedom I actually had and the will to go out and do things. Now, as an adult, I just work and sleep 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I don't really have plans for anything coming up. Story 82. I hated my teenage years. They were possibly the worst time of my life. Story 83. Not needing to actually pay for anything, my salary is not my own. Story 84. Nothing. I'm still a teenager, and I can't wait for it to be over. Story 85. Not being stressed about what the president was going to do. Story 86. What I do not miss is getting laid in the back seat of a Volkswagen Beetle. Story 87. Nothing. You could not pay me $1 million to revisit that experience, even for a day. Story 88. My home life was so abusive that I do not miss it at all. At home and at school, I was bullied and punished for standing up for myself. I could not escape the harassment. My friends at the time were no better. They were cruel and mirrored my family in a strange way. I am only thinking about it. Story 89. I do not miss the acne, braces, puberty changes, or the cruelty of other teens. Story 90. The lack of an ever-present sense of dread about the future. Story 91. Not paying for groceries, having my laundry done, homemade dinners, and other similar things. Story 92. I am still a teenager, so I may be biased, but what I miss about my early teen years is how much less stress there was. Story 93. Being able to eat whatever and however much I wanted without gaining a single pound. Story 94. As a 23-year-old, I don't really miss it. My teenage years were pretty depressing, and I'm finally breathing after feeling like I was drowning since I was 16. So yeah. Story 95. Absolutely nothing. My teenage years are something I will never look back on with fondness, but my 30s and 40s were my best years. Story 96. I am concerned about the hair on my head, my physical fitness, and my lack of responsibility. I also lack funds and make poor decisions. Story 97. All I had to do was keep my room clean, get good grades, and mow the lawn. That was much easier than my current obligations. Story 98. My dad died a couple of years ago when I was in my mid-20s. Sorry, that is a bit of a downer. My life is much better now than it was then. Please laugh. I am doing okay. Story 99. Being fucking oblivious with no need to make money and minimal responsibility. Story 100. I miss being allowed to be stupid when the stakes were low, spending time with my friends every day, and having almost unlimited free time. If I got a bad grade on a test or missed a homework assignment in high school, oh well. The worst consequence might have been not getting into an elite college. Now, if I perform poorly at work or call in sick for a day, I could be fired, which means bills would not get paid and there would be no food on the table. I could end up homeless or starving, which is far less fun. Worst of all is the feeling of school versus work. Teachers wanted me to succeed and do well for my own sake. In the workforce, I often feel like I exist only to make money for someone else. My performance does not benefit me directly, and I could be replaced in a day. Not a great feeling. Story 101. The opportunity to do reasonably stupid things and still have the excuse that I'm just a kid. Story 102. I had the time to finish projects and to start new ones. I also had family when I was a teenager, but that has diminished over the years and was never replaced. Story 103. Weighing 105 pounds. Eating whatever junk food I wanted without consequences. The music of the 1990s. The sense of optimism knowing my whole life was ahead of me. My fuller head of hair. My dance moves. My 24-inch waist. My very high libido, my high energy level, rarely getting sick. Now I often lie in bed fatigued for no reason. Story 104. Friends. The energy, the body, the hair, the color the world used to have. Story 105. Staying up past 1 a.m. and still having energy the next morning. Video game days. Eating a terrible diet and still having a six-pack. Being able to masturbate multiple times every day. Story 106. Bombing hills on my bike or skateboard from morning until past midnight, alone or with my friends. Such exhilarating times. Story 107. Not much. I was an outcast as a teenager. Now, as an adult, I am confident and can get along with almost any crowd. Things were cheaper back then, though. Story 108. Probably the freedom of having fewer responsibilities and just hanging out with friends without worrying about anything. Story 109. Prijete na devoracku care pot petreće zile întregi pe drumuri. Story 110. I had zero energy in the morning as a kid. Now, at 41 years old, I feel much more refreshed and well-rested in the morning. Story 111. I was being stupid, laughing out loud. I can't believe how many things I did without worrying about the consequences or the what-ifs. Story 112. I don't miss that. It sucked. But sometimes I do miss one thing. My first love and hanging out at recess. Story 113. I miss having school as my only real responsibility. I'm tired of adulting. I can't actually do what I want when I want. Everyone wants my money. The chore and to-do list never goes away, and now other people depend on me to do all this. I want a refund on the lie our parents sold us. And don't get me started on thinking I knew what burnout or exhaustion was. When I was 17, I could stay up all night and go to class the next day. Now I'm lucky if I'm in bed before I pass out. Story 114. I miss being carefree and not having to stress about finding a career or supporting myself financially. Paychecks at that age were usually just spending money for outings, food, or entertainment. There was a lot of peace of mind because the biggest stress was often getting decent grades or passing exams. These days, a large portion of each paycheck goes to bills, and it feels impossible to save. I did not have that issue as a teenager, despite earning much less. I also miss seeing friends every day. My same circle from high school is still our main friend group. But as adults, it is much harder to get everyone's schedules to align, so we see each other once or twice a week. Story 115. It felt like time lasted longer. It may be a silly thought and purely my perspective, but for me, at 33 years old, Ages 13 to 19 felt 3 to 4 times longer than ages 27 to 33. The older you get, the more time seems to speed up. During my teenage years, the days seemed to never end. Story 116. I had far fewer responsibilities. I still had some, but not as many as I do now as an adult. Story 117. Having no responsibilities and only worrying about grades and whether Daphne likes me. Story 118. The fact that I could sleep anywhere, eat anything, work hard, and play hard. Story 119. Laughing. Oh my, I used to laugh, but now I don't see anything funny. Story 120. I didn't. My stress was at an all-time high. I was forced to deal with my mother and was subject to her verbal and mental abuse. I hated my body and had all the markings of an eating disorder. I had no freedom, no friends, no self-worth or self-esteem, and wanted to never be seen by anyone. It gets better. Story 121. Tell me that, at the time, the biggest tragedy of your life was that your Tamagotchi had died. Story 122. The friends I thought I had. Now I can barely stand people. I let only a few into my life. Story 123. I do not miss anything because I hated my life as a teenager. Thank God I did not end it. Story 124. I can do what I want with my money and am not obligated to spend it on things I do not want. Story 125. The freedom of no obligations and the dreams for the future. At 63, there is only the realism that this is it. Story 126. The courage. I am terrified when I remember the things I have done. Story 127. The future is in front of me, and I get to shape and mold it. Story 128. Nothing, actually. I appreciate the memories, but there is nothing I miss about my teenage years. Story 129. The freedom of being young. You feel things so deeply at that age, but with innocence because it is new. There were no bills, and many had a part-time job just to have fun or to save. Most importantly, time slowed down. You did not have to think about surviving because you were living. Story 130. The ease of making friends disappears. After college, everyone goes off and does their own thing, and forming friendships becomes harder. It is not impossible, but it takes much more work than it did as a teenager. Story 131. No bills to pay, no responsibilities, no worries about the future, and no fake friends. Story 132. Freedom. Feeling invincible. The only things I needed to focus on were easy coursework and where the best party would be that weekend. Laughing out loud. Story 133. Everything seemed deep and meaningful. I thought the world was more than the endless cycle of work, paying bills, handling unexpected expenses, and gradually losing who I used to be. Story 134. Seeing my parents every day and enjoying not having to cook or do housework. Story 135. I go to basement shows with friends and stay afterward to play guitar around a fire. Story 136. The feeling of freedom, the intensity with which you live and experience everything, friendships that often last a lifetime, first loves, and a bit of madness. These energies and the simple outlook on life are priceless at that age. Story 137. Having a will to live, along with happiness and self-confidence. Story 138. Emotionally manipulative nice guys with hormones to the max are still around in their 40s and 50s. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.